Welcome to Module 5. In this module, we will focus on the development of curriculum goals and learning outcomes. The material in this module is especially relevant for assignment number 3. First, the development of curriculum goals is essential in the curriculum development process. These goals communicate the overall purposes of the curriculum and inform and direct what should be included in it, including its learning outcomes. As discussed in the required article by Hardin, there are some differences between the terms learning objectives and learning outcomes. After completing this required reading, I ask you to consider if the distinctions between learning objectives and learning outcomes matters to you. You will also see in the required textbook for this course, they tend to use the term objective rather than outcome. However, I think the term learning outcome resonates more with me given the emphasis within health professions education on outcomes and competency-based education. The term learning outcome also enables me to focus exclusively on the completion of the following sentence. By the end of this curriculum, learners will be able to do what? Thus, as you'll see in my instructions for assignment number 3, I focus on learning outcomes rather than objectives. However, I'm open to your ideas, and if you feel passionate about a certain term or concept, please feel free to start a discussion thread on Brightspace for this module. It is here on this discussion board that we will also be able to work through some of the complexities that help us differentiate these two terms. Regardless of the terminology that you use, these learning outcomes or objectives should describe what a learner will be able to do as a result of learning. They should also describe what a learner will be able to do as a result of teaching, thus recognizing the differences between teaching and learning. And in my opinion, these learning outcomes are essentially a contract that educators make with learners that describes what they will be able to do after learning that they could not do before the learning experience. Thus, it's the added value of the teaching that helps them achieve these learning outcomes. The following slide summarizes some of the characteristics of good learning outcomes. Please take a few minutes to review it. When developing learning outcomes, it is important to remember the following formula. Who will be able to do how much of what by when? So let's review the following example and try out this formula. As you will see, the blue font highlights the who. The green font highlights the action word or the verb. The red font highlights what specifically the learners will learn. And the purple font indicates by when they will learn it. When you are developing the learning outcomes for your curriculum, it is important to remember this formula and to practice highlighting who will be able to do how much of what by when. To gain some additional practice with this formula for developing learning outcomes, I encourage you to complete learning activity number 1 for this module. In this activity, you will use the information in Chapter 4 from Curriculum Development for Medical Education to revise a set of pre-established learner objectives, that is, learning outcomes. Please note that Table 4.2 on page 54 of Chapter 4 may also provide you with some additional hints in terms of revising these learning outcomes. As also detailed in Chapter 4, specifically in Table 4.3 or page 55, there are different types of learning outcomes or objectives. They can be grouped under the cognitive, affective, or psychomotor domains. First, the cognitive domain often refers to instructional or behavioral objectives or outcomes. The cognitive domain focuses on Bloom's taxonomy, that is, the mental or intellectual thinking behaviors demonstrated by an individual learner. In your curriculum, I anticipate that the majority of your learning outcomes will be focused on the cognitive domain. Whereas the affective domain focuses on the emotional learning, that is, an individual's emotions, attitudes, appreciations, interests, and/or values about something or someone. This type of domain is especially important if you are focusing on some of the non-technical aspects of health professions education, perhaps focusing on curriculum topics related to humanism or compassion within health professions education. Lastly, there's the psychomotor domain. This focuses on physical learning as well as performances within a curriculum. It can involve gross or fine motor skills such as coordination, dexterity, strength, manipulation, and speed. As mentioned in Chapter 4, the authors provide some additional information as well as some examples that might help you think through some of the potential learning outcomes for your own curriculum that relate to the various domains. I also encourage you to complete the second learning activity for this module. In learning activity number 2, you will see that it relates directly to assignment number 3. In it, you will need to describe some learning outcomes or learner objectives for your curriculum, the one that you're developing for assignment number 3. Using the information in Chapter 4 from Curriculum Development for Medical Education, you will be able to draft some learning outcomes specifically for your curriculum. If you want and you have time, I would also encourage you to begin thinking about the goals of your curriculum, which is also a key component for assignment number 3. Once again, please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and have an excellent week.